Hey everybody, this is D Hunter, bringing another action figure review. Today, we're going to be looking at the McFarlane DC Multiverse Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. I nicknamed this guy Crazy Colorful Batman. It's from a storyline called Batman R.I.P. The storyline sounded very questionable to me. Dr. Hurt was doing experiments years ago, and he had an isolation experiment. He put this trigger, Zur-En-Arrh, into Bruce Wayne's head. It was sort of based off the last words that Thomas Wayne said to him. He mentioned after leaving the theater that they would have thrown somebody like Zorro into Arkham. Zur-En-Arrh, Zorro into Arkham. Years later, Dr. Hurt and Black Glove were targeting Batman and his allies. They ended up using the trigger in conjunction with drugs, released Bruce Wayne with absolutely no memory of who he is onto the streets of Gotham. He made a makeshift Batman suit that looked like this, all stitched together with different various pieces. At one point in the comic, Batmite appeared to Bruce Wayne. It wasn't actually clear if it was Batmite or part of Bruce's drug-induced imagination. This guy's a Target exclusive, at least here in the US. I noticed on the Target app it said that they had one at the local Target. I called them up. They said they didn't have it, and I tried my luck, went there, and he's just sitting there right front and center. So let's go and check out the packaging. As you can see, 22 moving parts, McFarlane Toys, ages 12 plus, DC Multiverse, Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. Here he's in the package. He comes with a knife, a spike bat, a display stand, and a collector's card. I remember probably about a year ago, we saw an interview with Todd McFarlane, and this guy was sitting in the background. Some really observant fans pointed that out and shared this on the internet. Finally, he's here. One side of the package, Batman of Zur-En-Arrh for Batman R.I.P. Other side simply says Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. The bottom got a bunch of credits, and there is a barcode in case that helps anybody. And at the back side, here's Batman standing up holding his bat, and here are a bunch of other recently released McFarlane DC Multiverse figures you should check out. So no further ado, let's open him up. And here's this McFarlane DC Multiverse Batman of Zur-En-Arrh next to the Mattel Batman Unlimited Planet X Batman. It's the exact same figure, although this one comes with that really cool Batmite. Here's my collection of Batman R.I.P. This is the original run from Batman Comics 676 through 681, back in November of 2008. Alright, now that we got this figure out of the package, here he is with all his accessories laid out. He does come with a spike bat, a knife, a display stand, and a collector's card. But before we take a look at those accessories, let's talk about and check out the actual figure. So I briefly touched on the origin of the Zur-En-Arrh Batman in the intro. Dr. Hurt had this trigger word, and we have this crazy, sort of drug-induced, brainwashed Bruce Wayne with no memory of who he is. In addition to that, this suit first debuted back in the Silver Age comics, and it's even made an appearance in the Brave and the Bold cartoon. So let's take a look at him. Starting with his head here, the head looks fantastic, the cowl's great, long ears, looks like maybe a little bit of scruff on the chin. This could really be useful for customization purposes. Looks like the head is done in the traditional fashion at the top of the neck. As we go further down, he's got stitching all over his suit, shoulders kind of ripped, sticking out there, makeshift bat symbol in the front. Arms look pretty nice, double jointed elbows, crazy colors, purple, red, yellow, stitching on the legs. Really like the design so far. Double jointed knees, boots with tall laces. His cape looks absolutely fantastic. I can see them using this figure as a base for a lot of other Batman figures. Only parts you can't really use because of stitching would be the legs and the torso, arms, cape, possibly even the boots, and the cowl could be very useful for customization purposes. And just a closer look at his face and head sculpt, which I think is fantastic. Looks very similar to the Year 2 Batman. And since we're on the subject of his face and head sculpt, they're also making an unmasked Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. This is part of a McFarlane Toy Store exclusive bundle. You have to buy 4 or 5 figures just to be able to get the unmasked version. Now let's take a look at his accessories, and let's start off with the boring stuff. Here's his display stand, typical McFarlane stand, black perfect circle, says DC at the bottom. It's got one peg for the peg holes on his feet. Very thin, very basic. Now let's look at his collector's card. As you can see, it's an image of the Zur-En-Arrh Batman posed up. He's holding his bat. Batman of Zur-En-Arrh from Batman R.I.P. Backside there is a description. If you want to read that, go ahead and pause now. Now let's check out his knife. Not too much special going on here. The knife, silver blade, a little bit worn and beat up. And then at the handle here, brown, a little bit of sculpting detail. Here's Batman holding that knife. Here's his bat. Brown, sort of a wooden bat. It's got spikes at the top, and at the bottom you can see it's got a wrap all over the handle. Here's Batman holding the spiked bat. Then here's Batman holding his bat, getting ready to beat somebody senseless. And if you wanted to, you could have him holding both the bat and the knife at the same time. He has two gripping hands. I also wanted to add that his hands are very hard. They're not gummy like his accessories are. They're very hard to pull open and fit the accessories into his hands, especially the knife. Now that we've taken a pretty good look at both the figure and his accessories, now let's check out his height. From bottom to the top of his head, he's standing at about 7.25 inches tall, which you can translate to about 18.5 centimeters. And if you go to the top of the ears, about 7.5 inches tall. Now let's check out his articulation. Starting with his head here. Of course, it can rotate from side to side. Can like up that far, down that far. Pretty nice there. Can tilt his head from one side to the other. Give him good amount of personality. It is a very nice head sculpt. Shoulders on a ball joint. Goes out 90 degrees, no problem. Up, down, around, all that good stuff. Does have a butterfly joint between his shoulder and chest area, just increasing the range of motion. A little bit loose feeling. It looks a little bit odd with this top part here. Bicep cut below that. Double jointed elbows that go all the way in. His wrist is ball in it. Can rotate, and it's going to be hinged. Ball joint in his torso, rotate around, go forward and back. Another ball joint in his waist, rotate around, forward and back, giving him very impressive range of motion. Completely does the splits, not a ball joint, but a similar type concept. Rotation is very good. They go forward about that much, back about that much. Double jointed knees. Ankle has a ball in it, forward and back, can rotate, can tilt, rock, although mine is a little bit stuck, and he has toe articulation. Now this is not at all how it happened in the comics. This is my own little story. Many years ago, Bruce Wayne visited Simon Hurt, a famous psychologist. He was volunteering for an isolation experiment. This is the time that Simon Hurt took the opportunity to implant the trigger words Zur-En-Arrh. Many years later, Batman is confronting Dr. Hurt. That's the supervillain that Simon Hurt became. It's at that moment that Dr. Hurt uses the trigger word and completely subdues Batman. It's during this time that Dr. Hurt took the opportunity to pump Batman full of drugs. Between the trigger and all the drugs, they end up releasing Bruce Wayne on the streets. He has no memory of who he is. Essentially, they have defeated the Batman. Here's Batman on the streets of Gotham. He has this crazy, drug-induced hallucination of Batmite following him around. He has now put together his tattered suit and is fighting crime in Gotham City. As Dr. Hurt hears all these different reports of Batman fighting crime again in Gotham, the Batman that should be long dead and gone, he takes it upon himself to get Alfred captured. He now has leverage against Batman and Bruce Wayne. And the story ends with the Zur-En-Arrh Batman busting in and seeing Alfred held hostage by Dr. Hurt. He has Batmite whisper in his ear, and he's in for revenge and out for blood. Now let's check him out, next to some other action figures, starting off with Mattel's Batman Unlimited Zur-En-Arrh Batman. Here's the McFarlane Zur-En-Arrh Batman on the left, next to the Mattel version on the right. Obviously the McFarlane is a much superior figure, but this is not a bad offering from Mattel. There were some brand new parts in that figure, cape's tattered up. Cool, but not nearly as cool as McFarlane's. Here he is, next to Mattel's Batmite. That was a pack-in with their Zur-En-Arrh figure. Scales up fine with McFarlane as well. Then, next to my custom Dr. Hurt figure, he was a prominent antagonist in Batman R.I.P. Now this is definitely not the only crazy colored Batman any company's ever made. Here's a Zur-En-Arrh Batman next to the DC Collectibles Rainbow Batman 6-pack. There's also this Mattel Rainbow Batman, who's coincidentally also from the same story. Now let's check him out, next to some other McFarlane DC Multiverse figures. Here he is, next to Ultraman. These are the two Target exclusive figures that I scored at Target today. I've been checking the app and calling with the DCPI number almost every day. Today is the first time they hit in my area. Now let's check them out, next to some other Batman figures. McFarlane has a sort of wide variety of figures, different shapes, sizes, and scales. Here's a Zur-En-Arrh Batman next to McFarlane's larger Batman figures. That's where he fits in. He scales up with the larger side of the McFarlane line. And here he is, next to some of these smaller Batman figures McFarlane has to offer. I'm not very picky, but you can't deny there is a difference between these figures and the previous four. Here's the Zur-En-Arrh Batman next to the Year 2 Batman. Similar heighted figures, similar pointy ears, but I much prefer the way Zur-En-Arrh Batman's head attaches to his body. The neck and the head are separate pieces, allowing you to swap parts and customize your figures. Now let's check him out, next to some other recently released McFarlane DC Multiverse figures. Here he is, next to a couple of Lex Luthor figures. Then, next to Superboy Prime and the Birds of Prey Harley Quinn. And here he is, next to a couple of Mortal Kombat 11 Joker figures. Then, next to the Speed Force Flash from Zack Snyder's Justice League, and Reverse Flash from DC's Rebirth Comics. And here he is, next to Batman Beyond's Unmasked Batwoman and the Atomic Edition of Blight. And now, with a couple of Lobo figures. And here, next to a couple of General Zod figures. Then, next to the Future State Batman and Dark Detective. Then, with the Rebirth Batman and the Infinite Frontier Robin. Here's this Batman, next to the Dark Knight Returns Superman vs. Armor Batman 2-pack. And here he is, with the Lois and Clark Superman and the Rebirth Martian Manhunter. Then, with the Death of the Family Joker and the Justice League Endless Winter Aquaman. And now, here's this Batman next to the two most recent McFarlane Mega figures, Clayface and Titan Joker. Here's a Zur-En-Arrh Batman next to the Batman 3 Joker's Wave. Then, next to the Gotham Knights figures, still trying to track down the unpainted version of Batgirl and the red variation of Nightwing. And here he is, next to McFarlane's The Batman Collection. Then, next to McFarlane's Batman The Dark Knight Returns Collector Build a Horse Wave. And finally, next to the Justice League Endless Winter Collector Build a Frost King Wave. Now let's check him out, next to some action figures from different various companies, to see how he fits in both scale and style-wise, in case you want to know which lines you can mix him with. Since he's a McFarlane figure, they're typically the 7-inch scale. I'm going to start off my comparisons with some of the large action figure lines I collect, and work way smaller. And I'm going to include as many Batman figures as I can during these comparisons. Since we already checked him out with a wide variety of McFarlane Batman figures, here he is with some other McFarlane figures. In front of you are 5 different action figure lines, all from McFarlane Toys, all 7-inch scale. Then, next to some more McFarlane toys, these are from different various video game properties. And now, next to some Jax-specific wrestling figures. And here he is, next to some DST or Diamond Select toys. Then, next to some DC Direct and DC Collectibles Batman figures. And here, with some NECA Batman figures. Then, next to some Mattel wrestling figures. And now, with some Jazzwares AEW wrestlers. And here he is, next to some Mezco 112 Collective Batman figures. Then, next to some Mattel DC Universe Classics and Multiverse figures. And here, with some Mafex Batman figures. Then, with some Hasbro Marvel Legends. And here he is, next to some SH Figure Arts Batman figures. And finally, next to some Jazzwares Fortnite figures. Overall, it's a pretty cool Batman figure, but he's definitely not very practical. I can see a lot of people possibly skipping on this figure, because I don't need a crazy colorful Batman in my collection, although I personally get all the Batman figures that are out there. I can see a lot of people buying this thing specifically for customizing purposes. His proportions are pretty good. can't really get a lot of use out of his legs or torso, but all the other parts are fantastic. I've already seen some pretty cool repaints out there. If I were to rate this figure, I'm going to give him a 7.5 out of 10. Even though I don't feel like he's necessary, it is a very well done and nice figure. His accessories are pretty cool. He comes with 2 weapons. Articulation is actually better than your typical McFarlane figure. Sculpted paint job, absolutely no issues there. So this is D Hunter. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked the video, press like below. If you have anything you want to say about the video, add it to the comment section. If you want to see additional action figure reviews from me, press subscribe. I do appreciate when you do that. Once again, this is D Hunter. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll talk to you guys real soon.